Friends, I'm Swati Nalwaya, Associate Professor in English from SPC Government College, Ajmer. Friends, you must have viewed my earlier videos on Sylvia Plath, the American poet. Today I'll be talking about Sylvia Plath and a remaining autobiographical note in the third part. In my earlier two lectures, I had talked about Sylvia Plath as being an American poet, novelist, and a short story writer. I had also mentioned that she is credited with advancing the genre of conventional poetry and is best known for two of her published collections, The Colossus and The Ariel. Friends, we have in our syllabus the major known poetries of Sylvia Plath, that is Daddy and Lady Lazarus, which are though lengthy poems but do depict the life experiences of Sylvia. She was a winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1982, which she received after her death. Even though she had a very complicated life and career, but still she remains one of the most popular and widely studied poets even today. Friends, I had also mentioned Sylvia as having her first poem published at the age of 8 in the Boston Herald's children's section, and also that right after that, from the age of 8 only, she started writing and publishing in several local magazines and papers, and that she lost her father at a very young age of 8, and it was very saddening for her. And later on they moved to Wellesley for a higher education and high school graduation with her mother and her grandparents. And I had also mentioned that she had been diagnosed with clinical depression and was undergoing electroconvulsive therapy to treat her depression. And she also made, I had also mentioned that she had made her first suicidal attempt in August 1953, and after that she received intensive psychiatric care for the next 6 months. She also received a Fulbright scholarship to Newnham College, which was one of the exclusive female colleges at Cambridge, and also that she won the Glasgow Prize for her poems Two Lovers and A Breechcomber by the VIII-C. And she met Ted Huey, who was a fellow poet at the University of Cambridge, and the very same year, after a few months of courtship, where during that period when they had exchanged several poems, the couple, they got married in London in June 1956 itself, and later on then moved to the United States, where Plath started teaching at the Smiths, and together with the teaching profession, though she could not devote much time to writing, which frustrated her, and later they moved to Boston, where she developed her own signature writing style, and because she was working at the Massachusetts General Hospital's psychiatric ward as a receptionist. And she was also greatly encouraged. I had also mentioned that she was greatly encouraged by Robert Lowell and Annie Sexton, who were her fellow poets, and she admired Lowell's poetry a lot. And in 1959, Plath and Ted Huey, they embarked on a trip to the United States and Canada, where she could nurture her creative pursuits without the interference of the outside world, and she became more comfortable working there. Later, I had mentioned that she had been shortlisted on several occasions by the Yale Younger Poets Book Competition, and her work was also published in noteworthy magazines like Harper's, The Spectator, and the Times Literary Supplement. And she also had a contract with the New Yorker, and her first full collection, the Colossus and other poems, were also published in 1960. Now, Plath's most today I'll be talking about the remaining part of her autobiography and try to wind up today. Plath's most famous work, a novel, The Bell Jar, was a semi-autobiographical one, though it had enough information about her life, and so efforts were made by her mother to stop its publication, because the novel deals with the issues of mental health and female empowerment. It also deals with the idea of female search for identity and independence. Now, in 1961, Sylvia had a very traumatic experience, and she wrote several poems depicting that devastating experience. She delivered her son Nicholas in 1962, and later the couple separated due to the extramarital affair of Ted Huey. Now, after The Bell Jar, Plath wrote another novel which was titled Double Exposure, which was half written and whose whereabouts are not known as yet. Her final work was Ariel, which was published 2 years after her death in 1965. And this publication actually brought true fame and status to Sylvia. She was also highly influenced by Lowell's collection, Life Studies. Now, quite many works of Sylvia Plath were published after her death, which includes 2 volumes of poetry, The Winter Trees and Crossing the Water, in 1971. The collected poems was published in 1981, which deals with her early efforts in 1956 till her death in 1963. Now, a few of her letters and journals were also published after her death. Now, among her works, we also have the most noteworthy poems like Daddy, Lady Lazarus, The Applicant, etc., to name a few, and her final works and posthumous publications, which were between 1964 and 1981. They include, besides those that I have already cited before, letters home correspondence from 1950 to 1963, which were published in the year 1975. The collected poems in 1981, and the journals of Sylvia Plath, which were published in 1982. Now, some of her diaries were also published, and other diaries were acquired by her alma mater, Smith's College. Now, Plath, as we have known, has had always been struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts throughout her life. In the years right before her death, also she suffered from the long-lasting depression, which led to insomnia, and ultimately she was found dead by the nurse on February 11, 1963, at the age of 30. Even Huey, though he had separated from Plath, he also died soon after her of terminal cancer, and her son Nicholas also committed suicide out of depression. If we see Sylvia Plath's life in a nutshell, we could very well say that she still holds her place as a well-known writer in American literature, and along with some of her contemporaries, tried to reshape and redefine the poetry world. That's all on the autobiographical note about Sylvia Plath. Friends, I'll be coming up with more lectures of mine describing Sylvia Plath's poetry, Daddy and Lady Lazarus, in my remaining classes. Till then, goodbye and thank you, friends.